fantastical beings, and welcome to another video. This video is the last part of me filling up this Sennelier watercolor palette that you've seen me fill up for the last couple weeks on this channel. I'm really excited to share how it will turn out with you guys, as I will be pouring in the paints in the third row on screen, plus the two on the total right side of your screen, so the Holbein and the Schminke paint. I will swatch out these paints in another video to come, so please subscribe if you would like to see that. We are beginning our final row with the bright yellow green by Sennelier. It's a series 2 paint, and it consists of two pigments, the PG7 and the PY, and I think then something fell off of this print because I'm pretty sure just PY is not a pigment, but let me know if this is a misprint if you guys have this tube as well at home, because I couldn't find any information on it. Now, as you see, this is my horror paint, my nightmare for this palette, and I already let you guys know that stuff would not go all smoothly with filling up this palette, and this is definitely number one of the mess up. You can see the binder is come out and there's hardly any pigment in there. So I poured some of that out, and I needed the tube to get a better distribution, but even though I did that, I poured it out and it still turned out to be pretty much binder and some of the pigment. Now, of course, I don't want that influencing my paint in the end, so I went ahead and got a clean half pan and filled it up. And as you can see, this is about the best I could get it to be, even with the mixing in the tube and all. I do go in, as you can see, with this needle and trying to mix it. And you can see it does actually mix, but it takes such a long time to actually get it in there well enough. I can't explain why this paint had such a profound binder and pigment separation to it. If you guys noticed this in your paint of this color from Sennelier, please let me know, because I'm really wondering if it's something that I did wrong. Now here you can see me compare these paints. The first one of the pigment in the binder where it's not totally mixed in. I did try to actually go ahead and mix that one in as well, as you can see, to see if I can get it closer to the quote-unquote good poured half pan, but it does seem to be a lot less thick than the other one. So I kept both of these and I decided to put them both on my palette and, compare them when I swatch them out later. Now, I do have to say, at this point, my hands were so sticky from the honey that this paint is based on, because that binder was everywhere and it got everywhere. So I ended up cleaning my desk after that. Light yellow ochre is next, and I was praying that it wouldn't be such a mess. It is PY42 and PY150, and it is a pretty opaque paint according to the tube. So I was just really hoping and praying that this wouldn't be such a separated paint again. I hadn't encountered any of those before, but yeah, there we go. And at that point, I just decided to start kneading all of these tubes before I poured them out. I cleaned up this half pan. Again, everything was sticky after that, and there was the pigment. I really don't know what these two paints have in common that made them so prone to separating, and I really hope that when I swatch them out, it's not going to affect their overall quality, because brands will, of course, think about how many binder and pigment they put in a paint to make it workable and achieve the results that they want you to achieve. So this is the paint after I mixed it, which looks a lot better. I'm really holding my heart for when I swatch them. Moving on is gold ochre. Now, this paint is made up of PY119 and PY42 and PY83. So I do actually need this and mix this paint tube off screen, because it's quite hard to, show you guys that part, and it's quite boring to see. So let's see if this worked for this paint. And immediately I saw a lot of pigment and I was so happy. This color is pretty close to that binder color that you saw, so it did throw me for a loop just a second, but there we go. It's pigment and it doesn't seem to be separated as much. And with that ochre color, we are moving toward the more neutral side of the Sennelier palette, and we have the Paynes Grey to add to that. It is made up of PV19, cat hair in the way there, PB15:1, and PBK7. So because I had that ochre color before this and that went okay, I started to regain some confidence that it wasn't actually something that I might be doing, but it might just be those two paints that happen to be a bad couple of paints in the bunch. So at this point I was more comfortable pouring them out again while I did mix them in the tube beforehand. Now it's difficult to see on screen. This just looks like a black color, although maybe if you add some imagination you can see more of a blue type of undertone in there. And that might very well be possible looking at the pigments that are in this paint. I am pretty happy that this one didn't separate as much because I was going through those half pans quick this way. Moving on to neutral tint. It is made up of pigments PB60, PBK7, and PR209. Now, according to the label, this should be way more neutral, and the Paynes Grey is supposed to be more of a greenish, bluish undertone. So I'm really curious to see what they will look like if I swatch them out, but also when I poured these, if I could tell a difference. This neutral tint was so much smoother and more liquidy than the Paynes Grey before this. I mean, that was pretty smooth, but look at this. It is very liquid. Now, there was no binder and pigment separation that I could see, so I'm just guessing that this is gonna be good. Yeah, look at me trying to pop this bubble here. End up not working out at all. Seeing as I now had made 2 bubbles instead of 1, I figured maybe it's just okay if I call it a day and let these bubbles remain instead of mixing in more and more air into this paint. So I guess this neutral tint with their bubbles, it's kind of got me beat. So on with another neutral. This is the Dyke Brown. Now the label looks pretty red, so let's see. Yep, there's PBK7 and PR101 as pigments in here. It is an opaque paint, so curious to see what that will translate like on the paper. And also if that paint is any Sennelier standard good, because I heard that they were supposed to be super known for their transparency, and I wonder what their opaque paints are like and if they are of the same quality. That came out perfectly smooth and very, very fitting for my palette. I love that I didn't have to mix this. Now on to another color that has a lot of that red undertone. This is warm sepia. It is made up of the pigments PBR7 and PBK7. So actually a brown and a black pigment. So it's maybe in the brown pigment that it's more to the reddish side, because the label definitely shows some red in there. Ooh. Yeah, I wanted to show you guys this. Sorry for the autofocus. This actually burst at the top, so all the paint came spilling out. So on top of all the honey that was covering my desk at this point, also that warm sepia just really wanted to be on my desk. So it was getting super messy, and as you can see, it was also pretty liquidy, this paint, so it was everywhere, and I had to save my kitties from not becoming this type of warm sepia all on their white fur. But luckily they managed not to run across it. Now the next color we will be pouring out is this bitume or transparent brown or asphalt. I've never seen a color with so many names. It's made up of PBK 7 and PR 101. It is a transparent paint, so I'm looking forward to seeing what this is like if it has so many names for the same paint. Now luckily this tube of paint didn't decide to just open at the top. You can see my fingers totally covered in that warm sepia from just before at this point, but this paint remained in its tube nicely like it's supposed to, and it was quite an easy pour. Not too liquid, so it didn't really lie down flat as some of the other paints did, but it still managed to fill up this half pan quite nicely. And of course I just had to go in and try and lay it down smoothly myself because I do like that look in my palette a little better. Okay, so I was really excited to pour out this paint, the greenish umber. It is made up of the pigments PB60, PBK7, and PY83. Now the reason I really wanted to swatch this and pour it out in the first place is because I have no color like it. I imagine umber to be quite a brown tint, so having a green in there kind of defeats my idea of umber. So I'm really curious to see what this will look like besides the print on the label. Now again, this paint is very liquidy, and I was very happy that this tube didn't break because that would also get everywhere. But luckily it didn't, and it stayed nicely in the pan and the tube just like it should. Now from the Sennelier lineup, we have reached the final color of this palette. It is the Raw Sepia color by Sennelier. It is made up of PBR 7 and the PBK 7. Now don't worry about this being the last paint I pour on this video and this video ending too soon, because I won't forget pouring out that Holbein and that Schminke color next, so stay tuned for those. But first, let's pour out this Raw Sepia color. Now I think the Sennelier paints really waited and saved the best for last, because look at that consistency. It is the perfect in-between, and it totally laid flat all on its own without me having to mix it. It was perfect, you guys. Now, like I promised, the Holbein paint. This is the color Shell Pink, or W026. Now, this paint has always kind of mesmerized me when I saw it online, so I ran into it from somebody local selling it, so I just really had to get it. It is the P073 and the PW6 pigment, so it's no surprise that this is going to be more opaque because of the addition of the white pigment in there. It looks like a salmon on screen, and depending on how you swatch it out, it might actually be that color or a little bit more to the pink side as I've seen online, so really curious to see what this color can do for me. Just reminds me of a beach, but also perfect skin tone. Now, really the last paint for this palette is the Delft Blue by Schminke. This paint is made up of the pigment PB60, so it is just the one pigment in this paint. I have actually swatched this out in another video before. I will link it up above if you want to see that, but I wasn't sure if I got the mixture totally right. There was quite some granulation, of which I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be there. But this paint poured out so nicely as well in this palette, and you can see the deep dark blue that it is. So I already popped in that third row of the neutrals in there, and I went ahead and added the Delft Blue and the Shell Pink right on the first row because I still had some space left and they were quite vibrant, so I thought they fitted more there. Now I do have that extra bright yellow green or greenish yellow, the one where the pigment and the binder didn't really mix well. And I decided to just put it on the fourth row because I had no other paints there yet, and I would know that it was a double. You can see it is the same one as the one above it. And I put the lowest one as the one that mixed the least with the pigment. And I figured I did still have one full pan just sitting here in this cardboard palette all by its lonesome, and it really deserved a place to just be with other paints. And seeing that this palette was already not just focused on one brand, I went ahead, got this out, and put it in the fourth row as well. Now this is actually a color by Roman Schmal, and I did already swatch that out for you guys in the same video I swatched that Delft Blue paint in. So I will leave a link again up above if you want to see that. So with that, I just go ahead and close these metal clasps so that all those paints are in there snugly and they won't move around too much. Now, I'm planning to travel with this, so I don't need them to be totally tight in place, but just a little bit when I wet my brush for painting would be nice to just really have a steady palette. And with that, all that is left to do is pop this metal inlay back into the palette that it came from so that when they dry, not all of the cat hair flying around in the air will just contaminate my pretty paints. Now let me show you close up. It's quite difficult with this light. Ooh, I bumped the camera. Sorry, you guys. I hope you can see all those lovely colors, and I know that those deep dark hues and those neutrals are really hard to tell apart right now, but I'm really hoping that that will show up lovely when I swatch them out in a next video. If you guys liked this video of me pouring out this Sennelier palette, please consider leaving a like or a comment, or maybe even subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate every single one of you here, and I just love having this tiny little private art community for us. So thank you guys so much for watching me pour this palette, and let me know if you want to see this palette swatched out in a next video, and I will get on that. Thank you guys for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.